Years later, Jamie received a chilling text from Alex, an old friend she hadn't heard from in ages. "Meet me at the park," it said. Nostalgia pulled Jamie back to their childhood haunt, where laughter once echoed. When Jamie arrived, Alex stood there, unchanged and smiling as if time hadn't passed. Unease crept in as memories resurfaced. Alex had vanished years ago, leaving everyone searching. As Jamie recalled that dark day, dread filled the air. The smile on Alex's face twisted, revealing something sinister beneath. Suddenly, Alex's form began to fade into the shadows of the trees, leaving Jamie trembling, trapped in the park with the weight of forgotten memories and the haunting realization that some friends never truly leave. At first, they dismissed the faint footsteps in the hallway as an old house settling, but then they saw it, a small shadow, child-sized, moving toward the nursery door, vanishing whenever they turned on the lights. Each night, the shadow crept closer. Desperate, they set up cameras. The footage was terrifying, a dark, childlike figure gliding toward the nursery, pausing outside the baby's room. On the final night, the video showed the shadow hovering over the crib, stretching a thin, dark hand toward their sleeping child, just before the screen cut to black. When they rushed in, the nursery was empty, yet the air was filled with the smell of something cold and damp, and the faint echo of a child's laughter lingered in the room. She'd started noticing it slowly, small, strange changes in her apartment. Her toothbrush damp when she hadn't used it, her favorite coffee mug just slightly out of place. At first, she blamed herself. Maybe she was getting careless. But one night, after returning home, she found a single muddy footprint by her bedroom door. Determined to catch whoever was sneaking in, she bought a cheap hidden camera and set it up in her living room. The next day, she came back and played the footage. As she watched, her heart stopped. There, in the frame, was a figure emerging from her closet, walking around her apartment as if it was his own. Then, in a chilling moment, he looked directly into the camera, smiled, and mouthed. She tore her gaze from the screen, feeling his presence more than ever, as if he was already watching her again. Late one night, a man rushes through a deserted office building, trying to catch the elevator to the lobby. When the doors open, he freezes. The elevator looks empty, until he notices a figure standing in the corner, facing the wall. A chill runs down his spine as the doors close, trapping him inside. As the elevator starts to go down, the lights flicker. With each passing floor, the figure slowly turns, revealing a pale face twisted into a creepy smile. Panic sets in as he remembers the stories. Tales about an elevator that goes down past the lobby into places where no one comes back. Suddenly, the elevator jolts, skipping the lobby and going deeper underground. The air feels heavy, and the figure moves closer, its smile growing wider. He frantically presses the buttons, but nothing happens. The forgotten elevator continues into the dark, and he realizes he may never escape. A long-haul trucker takes a detour down an unmarked road, hoping to save time. The road stretches endlessly, with no turnoffs or signs, just darkness ahead. His fuel gauge drops fast, but he keeps going until he starts noticing strange things. First, an abandoned gas station, then a decaying billboard. 10 minutes later, he sees them both again, and again. It's like he's trapped in a loop, the same landmarks repeating. Pulling over, he steps out, scanning the pitch-black surroundings. Silence hangs heavy. Suddenly, shadowy figures emerge from the darkness, their eyes glinting in his headlights. He jumps back into his truck, locking the doors as the figures close in, surrounding him. His heart pounds as he realizes there's no one else on the road, no escape, and his fuel is running dangerously low. A woman finds a beautifully wrapped package on her doorstep with no return address. Curious, she opens it, revealing a porcelain doll with an eerily lifelike face and eyes that seem to follow her every move. Uneasy, she places it in the attic, hoping to forget about it. The next day, however, the doll reappears on her kitchen table, staring up at her with a faint, unsettling smile. She tries throwing it away, but each morning it returns, its expression shifting. First anger, then sorrow, and finally, an unhinged grin that chills her. As she grows increasingly desperate, she notices subtle changes, the doll's hand now slightly raised, its head tilted as if watching her sleep. One night, she locks it in the basement, thinking she's free, only to wake and find it lying beside her in bed, its cold hand resting on her arm and its eyes fixed intently on her. Jake had always found his old apartment cozy until the whispers started. At night, he'd hear a faint voice through the vent, calling his name, begging him to come find them. It felt like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. When he mentioned it to his neighbor, they grew pale. "You're hearing the voice of the last tenant," they said. She vanished without a trace. That night, the whispers grew louder, a frantic plea echoing through the walls. Jake's heart raced as he felt a chill creep down his spine. The voice was getting closer, almost as if it were inside his room. He held his breath, straining to listen, hoping to hear something that would make sense. Instead, all he got was a desperate scream. "Help me!" Suddenly, the vent rattled violently, and he knew he was not alone anymore. Mia and her friends headed to a remote cabin, hoping for a weekend away from everything. After dinner, they gathered by the fire, playing a game where everyone had to reveal a secret. Mia laughed off her own turn, but when Kyle's came, his voice grew cold. "I know each of your secrets," he said, his gaze holding each of theirs. They laughed it off, but Mia couldn't shake a growing unease. That night, she awoke to scratching outside her door. Heart pounding, she opened it and found smears of blood trailing down the walls, a knife abandoned on the floor. She called for her friends, but the only response was Kyle's eerie laugh echoing through the darkness. As she backed away, it hit her. Kyle's game had never been just fun. Now, every flicker of shadow felt like him closing in, his secret knowledge about each of them now a deadly weapon. She turned to run, realizing she might be the last one left to escape his twisted game. Rick, a night shift taxi driver, was used to strange requests, but tonight was different. At 2 a.m., he pulled up to a quaint suburban home where a young woman in her 20s helped her little brother into the back seat before sliding in herself. "To the station," she said softly, her tone oddly formal. As Rick drove, he tried to make small talk, but the woman only stared blankly out the window, and the boy remained completely silent. Something felt off. When they arrived, she handed him a crumpled photograph. "If anyone asks, we were never here," she murmured. Rick glanced at the photo. It showed the same woman and boy, their faces joyful, but somehow strange, with a date stamped 50 years ago. Confused, he looked back, but the back seat was empty. No sign of the siblings remained, except a faint whiff of roses. That night, Rick couldn't shake the feeling that his passengers had come from somewhere far darker than he'd realized. When Lena inherited her grandmother's Victorian house, she was captivated by its eerie beauty. Exploring its dusty rooms, she discovered a hidden chamber filled with porcelain dolls, each frozen in a disturbingly lifelike expression. Her grandmother had been a dollmaker, famous for her precision, but these dolls felt off. Each night, Lena heard faint whispers coming from the room, but brushed it off as her imagination. One night, curiosity won, and she entered the room, her eyes adjusting to see the doll's glassy eyes all fixed on her.
"We belong to her,"
a voice whispered, faint but unmistakable. Her skin prickled as she looked around, seeing her own reflection in the glass cabinets. Her face seemed to blend with one of the dolls, its cold, expressionless eyes matching her own. She stumbled back, horrified, realizing the dolls weren't mere toys. They were souls, trapped in porcelain prisons by her grandmother's curse, and she feared she'd soon join them. Welcome to Dark by Scrapverse. Here we don't just tell stories, we summon them. We don't do happy endings here. If you crave the spine-tingling thrill of the unknown, you're in for a ride. In this realm, every tale is a fragment of a larger universe, crafted to chill your spine and ignite your imagination. Go on, go hit that subscribe button and come step into the shadows. This is Dark by Scrapverse.